So I'd like to thank UPM for the kind invitation for me to take part in this intellectual discourse. It's always good to share ideas with my colleagues in Malaysia. And nothing could be more exciting than Sabah or Sarawak elections where anything can happen. So what I would like to do this morning is basically to carry on from where Jayum left off and perhaps provide a wider context on how this election came about. And from there, we can delve into the deeper issues. And I'm sure my colleague Arnold, who's just come back from Interiors, will be able to do that on the ground side of things. So I think we need to understand the Sabah election within the context of all the tremendous changes that's happened in Malaysia over the last couple of months. So I think the starting point is probably the second regime change in Malaysia in February this year when the Pakatan Harapan government fell apart. And we saw the rise of Muhyiddin Yassin as the Prime Minister of the Perikatan government. So the two big consequences of that related to Sabah, of course, is that the fall of the Pakatan government also mean the more or less permanent split between Tun Dr. Mahathir and Anwar Ibrahim. So they're no longer together, and I doubt very much they can come back again. Especially with Anwar insisting that if there's going to be any more alliance with Mahathir, he will be the Prime Minister, and he was not willing to wait anymore. This will lead to a lot of friction within the opposition. But one of the positive things that came out of this friction among the opposition is that for the very first time, an East Malaysian politician was floated the idea that he can be a future Prime Minister of Malaysia. And of course, I'm referring to Shafiq Abdal. Previously, nobody took the East Malaysians seriously. East Malaysians were not even considered for the position of Deputy Prime Minister. So suddenly this year, because all the problems at the federal level, his name was being mentioned. So that's the first context. I think the second context is that because of all the federal upheaval, this led to the recent attempt by Musa Aman to make a comeback through defections. But of course, Musa Aman miscalculated the whole process. He did not expect the governor to sign the dissolution. So now we're heading towards a state election. But it's very clear during the process of trying to take over the federal government, as Sabah state government, it was very clear among all Sabahans and I think among the wider Malaysian public that this was not a Sabahan coup. This was basically a coup designed in KL and supported by KL. And for anybody, it is quite obvious that for Muhyiddin Yassin, GPS in Sarawak is already backing him. So there's no reason why he should not try to engineer a change in Sabah so that both Sabah and Sarawak will support him. But of course, one of the unintended consequences of this coup is that the leader, Musa Aman, has found himself a victim of internal UMNO politics. He was not able to become a candidate. But the good news is that if Perikatan or Barisan Nasional wins, everybody agrees that he will be the next TYT. So he has lots of stake in this state election, even though he's not a candidate. The other context I want to make is that this is the biggest free-for-all state elections in Sabah since independence. So the joke is that every Tom, Dick, and Harry is a candidate. So there's more than 400 candidates, almost 500. Oh, sorry, almost 450 candidates standing for the state election. You can see new parties coming up. Love Sabah Party, headed by the ex-foreign minister. You also have the ex-speaker of the Malaysian Parliament trying to revive a party called USNO, which had a very, very strong brand name among the Muslim community in Sabah. Then you also have another ex-chief minister, Tan Sri Chong, who's trying to revive the fortune of the Liberal Democratic Party. So he himself has come down to stand as a candidate. So as I earlier mentioned that there are many, many candidates, there's 447 candidates, a record. The way to put it in context is that if you were to divide the 447 by the number of seats in Sabah, you're looking at an average of more than 6 candidates per seat. And this is unheard of in Malaysia, The other thing which I think is a very good thing, and I must congratulate the Election Commission on this, despite the fact that so many people was running, they only rejected one candidate. And if I'm not mistaken, if my memory is correct, that candidate was a bankrupt person from USNO party or ex-member USNO. So given this background, the change in federal politics, the push by Musa using federal support, it is quite clear that this election is all about, Sabah for Sabahans versus outside interference. And you can see it very, very clearly in the way that Warisan Plus has pitched the message. Predominantly, it was around Dato Sri Shafiq Abdal. He talks about how Sabah is very different, unity, different races, and that we're trying to build a nation. And he, of course, even though he doesn't say, this is in contrast to Malayan politics, where it's sort of sharper edges in terms of race and religious relations. And he also managed to, of course, the other unity, he managed to rope in an ex-Chief Justice of Malaysia involved in the campaign process. Again, never happened in Sabah and Sarawak before, although a former Chief Justice did go up to Kelantan or Terengganu, I can't remember, a couple of years. But this is very new for Sabah and Sarawak. And of course, the wider question of MA63, which is an issue that nobody can run away from. So the other interesting observation, of course, is that in this election, another unique point is that the opposition do not have a chief minister candidate. So you don't really know if you support Perikatan or Barisan Nasional or UMNO, who's going to be the chief minister. In fact, they are so confused in Sabah that if you look at all the posters in Sabah, right, you have the picture of Muhyiddin Yassin, the prime minister, on the poster, even though he is not a candidate. So it is very strange that Shafiq Abdal is standing against a guy who's not even a candidate. So we have to see whether this will impact the elections. So basically, I think the important questions we want to ask ourselves this morning is that who is going to end up as the Muslim champion in Sabah? Last round, it was sort of equally divided between UMNO and Warisan. Warisan held on quite strongly to East Coast. I don't think there's an issue. The Chinese community, last few rounds, they supported the DAP, and I expect them to keep supporting the DAP. But the KDM ground is really split now. It's really split, especially in the interior. And Arno will give us more details about it. So you got major parties all claiming to be champions of the Kadazan Dusun community. Obviously, you got Warisan under the Daryl Lacking wing, the Kadazan Dusun wing. Then you got PBS trying to make a comeback as the champion of the Kadazan Dusun. And of course, Star is standing on Kadazan Dusun nationalism and MA63. So it's quite interesting. But of course, the other issues are similar to what we have in other state elections. PTI is now almost a permanent issue. You can't run away. It's just like MA63. When you talk about any elections in Sabah, you have to talk about MA63 and PTI. Some of the unusual thing this time is that I think there's a stronger push to kill off all the katak. So for the last few days, almost all the political parties are holding katak barbecue to show that they want to kill the frauds. But of course, the funny thing is that some of those people doing the cooking are themselves katak as well. So one of the interesting things and probably the most quotable thing from this state election was a quote from Jeffrey Kitingan. He's widely known as the King Katak of Sabah. He says that, there's nothing wrong with being katak. I'm an educated katak. And I think a lot of people started laughing, but at the same time, I think there's some truth for it. A lot of these kataks have not suffered in terms of their political standing by moving from one party to the next. So the last part, implications for the wider Malaysian political system. As Professor Jayam has mentioned, I think there will be a lot of blowback from the Sabah State election results towards Sarawak. I think the Sarawakians are watching very closely how the debate over MA63 is handled in Sabah, because the same sort of issues will rise in Sarawak. In fact, in some ways, the MA63 activists in Sarawak are even more active than those found in Sabah. In Sarawak, they've been holding rallies in Central Padan almost every weekend for the last 2 years. And they do it quite openly. In Sabah, it's more of it's not so open compared to Sarawak. I think the results of the tomorrow's election will also have a very huge impact on the work of the new Federal State Committee or Federal State Relations Committee under PBS President Dato' Mats. Although Dr. Max is not feeling very well, the committee is supposed to carry on working from the committee that was set up under Pakatan Harapan. And of course, this is an old East Malaysian committee. Dato Sri Palima Max is the chairman, and the deputy is actually Hanifah Taib from Sarawak PBB. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of stuff they're coming up with. Obviously, some of the issues they will have to deal with will be very difficult. Things like sharing of oil resources, who owns the right to the continental shelf. Pakatan Harapan was not able to resolve these issues, so I'm sort of looking forward to see whether under the PN they'll be able to deal with this. And of course, it depends on the nature of the result. This will also fuel the debate of secessionist movement. We try not to talk about this in Malaysia, but I think for Sabah and Sarawak, the feelings is quite real. We all know who we're referring to. They've been sort of using the social media to gather support for this idea that the Federation of Malaysia experiment has not worked. And secondly, for historical reasons, North Borneo and Sarawak should actually not be in the Federation in the first place. So I suppose all of us are expected to say something about tomorrow's results. I will be quite straightforward by saying that I think some of the parties making a lot of noise, throwing a lot of money on the ground, they'll end up with very few seats. In fact, I would predict that 40 to 50% of the candidates for tomorrow will actually lose the deposit. So my joke for today is that maybe the EC will make a profit out of this because they all lose the deposit. Okay. Secondly, the idea of killing off the Kataks. I do not think it is possible to kill the Katak. They have survived for many years. And if the election results are very close, I think there will be a mushrooming of Katak rather than the Kataks disappearing. The other point I want to make about tomorrow is that I think if you were to do a very detailed analysis of the voting pattern, you will see a very clear generation gap. In other words, young people will vote very, very differently from the older people. As I mentioned earlier, I think the Chinese and most of the Muslims has already made up their mind. So most of the fence sitters left are really in the Kedasan Dusun Moro community. And despite what everyone else is doing in terms of strengthening the machine base in Sabah, I think personality is still the key to understanding Sabah politics. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Professor Dr. James Chin for very interesting opinion. So how to kill the Katak, Prof?
Not possible. Can I just mention, sorry, I just forgot one very important point I'm also making a prediction. This time I'm wearing my hat as a weather person. Sometime between this late afternoon and tomorrow morning, I expect a heavy rain in the Kedasan Dusun area, but it's not water flowing down. It's something else. Something else will be flowing down. So I expect great weather changes in the KDM areas late this afternoon to tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.